Good morning. This is Bill from Curious Cars on it's a semi-neutral Florida Thursday. It's not quite muggy, but it's not quite not muggy. You can definitely feel the humidity and the heat coming. It's only a matter of time before it gets really crappy, and then we're going to probably get another torrential rain this afternoon that just, if it doesn't last for a long time, if it lasts for like 10 minutes and the sun comes back out, then all the water that got dumped starts baking off the ground, and it just is unfit for human consumption. But that's the kind of crap we're dealing with down here now. So, I know my unofficial position with the Florida Tourist Board is going to be revoked soon if I keep this up, but I cannot. I can't powder, that's great. I can't sugarcoat it. It's just, Florida really just sucks. At least southern Florida sucks in the summertime. It's just too damn hot and too damn humid and too damn tropical. But anyway, what the hell are you going to do? There's been a very pissed off bird that's been floating around me. I don't know where the hell he is now, but he's been cawing or screeching, and it's got me a little bit nervous, and I'm keeping an eye out. You can see the bushes are growing back in, another sure sign that the goats are gone, because they were starting to denude those things. They were going to be down to nothing. And again, I swear, I think Peter took the old, axe to those things, or however he did it. They're gone. Maybe they used a Ferrari grinding machine, but we'll get into that. Anyway, today, and I will now leap again directly into this car, and much, much faster than usual. I have a 2010 Ferrari California. The Ferrari, I'm coming late to this game. I mean, there have been many, many videos on the Ferrari California, and frankly, this one probably won't be any different from those. So, whether you want to keep watching it or not is up to you, but I'll try to have a bit of fun with it. I just wanted to do it because a friend of mine who has to remain anonymous, I can't say who it is for a variety of political reasons, owns this car. It's not for sale, and I just wanted to I haven't done a Ferrari in a long time. I did a 599 Carly Fiorina a few years ago at Auto House when we were over on Goodlet Road. A friend of mine, Larry, I think I did his F360, and it has been a few years, and I thought it would be fun to get back into one, because Ferrari is actually one of those subjects that I really hate, to be perfectly honest, because if you do something with Ferrari in the public domain, like a video, you've got a group of people watching you that make the Porsche purists look like the Sisters of Charity. I mean, these guys are going to be up your ass. If you make one false statement, one little error, forget about it. You're going to be lynched in the public square in Modena, very, very quickly. So you have to be awfully careful with that. The Tafisos, I think that's what you call them, are some pretty tough cats, and they're very picky and very protective of their Ferrari lineage. But anyway, I will do what I can. Here is a very brief history of Ferrari before we get into this thing. It, of course, starts with a guy named Enzo, who everybody knows Enzo Ferrari, and even more so because of that Ford versus Ferrari movie that came out lately. Enzo was born in 1898. By all accounts, he was a nice child, but nobody really knows for sure. And in fact, evidence may point to him not having been one. But he participated in World War I. At a very young age, actually, he got involved with watching some sort of car racing and was absolutely taken with it. And it immediately became his life's passion. But of course, war comes along, as it did back then. I was explaining this to my nephew the other day, who is, the ultimate snowflake, 17 years old, and, has absolutely no concept of what life is, and actually thinks that kids today, have it hard instead of this endless series of green lights that they face. They have nothing to worry about. Nothing. They have to make up stuff to worry about. I remember we went to school with the thought of global thermonuclear war on a daily basis. They don't have any of that. None of that at all. And don't give me the climate change stuff. There is nothing in climate change other than what they read about that directly affects them. I guess we didn't exactly have Russian missiles coming at us either, but it's just like it's something that they can worry about that they don't really they don't really have to think too hard about. So it's an endless series of green lights for kids today. And honestly, my nephew just needs to shut the fuck up and get on with it. Pardon my French. But I digress. So where the hell was I? Enzo. So he does World War I. Again, wars that, my nephew doesn't have to deal with. He comes out of that. He wants to go to work in the car industry. He goes to Fiat, which was a big manufacturer in Italy at the time. They rejected him. They said they had too many World War I veterans around already, so they didn't need him. So he worked for some smaller companies for a little while, became a race car driver, and by all accounts, a pretty good race car driver, eventually racing for Alfa Romeo in their factory team, which was a pretty big deal. He, went on to form something called Scuderia Ferrari in 1929, which it didn't have any cars. It was essentially a conglomerate of rich guys who owned race cars that Enzo serviced and organized, and that was almost going to be a microcosm for what Ferrari would historically be. I mean, even though Ferrari is a, $30 billion multinational ultra-marketed brand now, it's always essentially been a race team that's been supported by the almost... they'll put up with it production of streetcars. Racing is where Ferrari's heart had always been. I suppose that's becoming more bastardized now as time goes on, but certainly up until Enzo's death, racing was what Ferrari was all about. And supposedly he resented the customers who bought the street stuff. He hated them. So they say, who knows? But I do believe there's some truth to that. Enzo's heart was definitely in racing. But anyway, so he had this thing in 1929. It was an unofficial team. Mostly they raced Alfa Romeos. They did have the Ferrari name on them later, but not as a manufacturer. And that morphed into them becoming the Alfa Romeo race team, basically, the official race team. And Enzo got an official position with Alfa, I think towards the end of the 36, 37, he was head of racing at Alfa Romeo. Shockingly, he didn't get along with them, ended up hating them. They ended up not being able to work too well with him. So in 1939, he left, and he formed his own company called and forgive me on that, I'm going to butcher every Italian word I say, the Auto Avio Costruzioni. He was not allowed to use the word Ferrari, his name, because of a non-compete clause. Actually, what's kind of interesting about that is in one of the races, I think it was the... you know what, I don't even remember what friggin' race it is. A couple of parents came up to him after the race and said, hey, our son used to put a horse on the side of his airplane and it gave him good luck in World War I. You should do this. So Enzo thought, yeah, what the hell? And that's where the prancing horse came from. You can see it on the side of this car. He picked yellow because it was one of the colors of his hometown, and the black horse, and of course that all became very, very famous and is now incredibly synonymous with the brand Ferrari. But anyway, so he started his own company. They released the 815 Sport, and again, without the Ferrari badge. And they were popular. They were road cars and race cars. They were doing well. But then, of course, World War II comes along, and Ferrari, instead of building cars, starts making grinding machines. I don't even know what they grinded. I just read that. Who the hell? Probably, to be true to Ferrari, it would be a finicky, expensive machine that's hard to keep going, expensive to repair, and probably grinds up money. That would have made the most sense. But eventually the war ended, and Ferrari went back to building cars almost straight away. And in 47, they released the 125 Sport, which was the first badged Ferrari. And, not truly the first Ferrari car, but the first car to wear the name Ferrari, and for all intents and purposes, the first Ferrari car. Enter a guy named Luigi Cinetti. He's an Italian-American, recently naturalized guy, and he goes to Enzo and says, man, we have got to start selling shit in America. There's a huge market for it. Of course, Enzo, who, is just a miserable old bastard, says, no, I don't like it. I don't like any of it. And Luigi raced Ferraris and did well with them. He kept at him, and Enzo eventually relented, and they did open a dealership, Luigi running it in Manhattan in I don't know, like 1950 or so. It did eventually move to Connecticut, but it was wildly successful. And it started the relationship of Ferrari with America for at least the next few decades, where American money buying Ferrari cars essentially financed Enzo's race team. And that deal, where it came here in the 50s, is what financed basically the 250 series, which is, and I promise you this is all leading somewhere, the 250 series is probably my favorite. You know, look, I stopped caring about Ferraris in any real way probably in the 1990s. I mean, the F355 was probably the last Ferrari that I really read or thought about or lusted after. You know, it's just, yeah, when you're a kid, the exotic stuff is amazing. But when you get a little bit older, if you're not... some of you, I lost it. I went from the Ferraris and Lamborghinis and that sort of thing to wanting 69 Camaros, and then I had my German intervention, and now I'm back to the 69 Camaros and 99 Buicks again. So Ferrari just sort of got lost to me. But as a kid, man, did I read about the early 60s, late 50s Ferraris. Then the three that come to mind more than any of them are the 250 TR, the first Testarossa, which is friggin' stunning, absolutely stunning car. The 250 GTO, which is probably the most collectible vehicle in the world. If you have that and a Mercedes Gullwing, you might as well quit. You got, suppose you could throw in a Bugatti or something. And then finally, and here's where we're getting somewhere, the 250 GT California, which was the first to bear the California name, and frankly, a little bit of a tip of a hat to the American market. That car was made pop culture famous, by the way, by Ferris Bueller's Day Off, if you remember that. And thank God that was a replica, the way they abused that thing. But what an absolute stunner, and what an incredible car. The second California was the 365, which came out, it looked very similar, sort of, but, still a very different car. And that was the second California in the mid-1960s. And here we have, and this is where it all comes together, the third California. Now, I mean, I could get into the Daytona, the Dino, Miami Vice came out with that Daytona in the 80s, which really pumped up Ferrari again after Magnum PI had pumped it up in 1979. I mean, those two shows absolutely launched Ferrari as synonymous with pizzazz in the United States. If they had any issue with their name before that, forget it. After those two shows, it was over. And in fact, Magnum PI, they almost used 928s. They had gone to Porsche, who had a new 928 out at the time, and said, hey, we want to use these cars for detective show that we're launching in Hawaii. It's got a big guy driving it, so we need you to chop the tops off and make them into Targas or something. And the Germans said, I don't think so. Their arrogance, they turned down CBS. The 928 was mostly a dud sales-wise, and the 308, which was in Magnum PI, probably at the time the best-selling Ferrari ever, and completely sealed their name in the in the average American mindset. So Porsche probably should have done that with the 928. It would probably be a different world right now for them. Anyway, so we won't get into that. Then, of course, Miami Vice, Ferrari ended up suing them over that Daytona because it was fake. They hated it. They came to an arrangement and they blew up the Daytona. I remember that. I can't remember what episode. I don't think it was the one with Ted Nugent, but maybe. But anyway, they exploded the Ferrari, and they replaced it with a white Testarossa. And ever since then, you will see Ferraris cruising all over the streets of Miami as though it's a thing. Conversely, I lived in Tampa for a while, and here's a bit of a non sequitur for you. Before I lived in Tampa, I genuinely thought Hulk Hogan had his own styling cues, but I was wrong. It turns out that pretty much everybody in Tampa, at least in the 1990s when I lived there, had spandex pants and those the things they wear on their head and little handlebar mustaches, and looked angry all the time. They just weren't as well physiqued as the Hulk was. So anyway, the things you learn when you move around. So here we are. What are we, like 10 minutes into the video and getting into this car specifically. This is the third incarnation of a Ferrari California, and it brought about several firsts for Ferrari and was a very controversial car when it came out, and it's less controversial today. I will say this about it: it was a bargain for a few years, an absolute bargain, and it's too late. You missed it. It's over. The prices have gone up commensurate with what the car is, and commensurate with what the car is, and it's over. I mean, I think there was a time you could get one of these for like 60 grand. Man, forget it. Almost double that today for the same car, and the days of the California bargains are gone. My buddy bought this thing just a few weeks ago and paid 100 grand for it, so, you know, there it is. Bargains are Elgano on the Ferrari California front. But anyway, it was very controversial for a variety of reasons. The main reason being, a lot of the purists said it wasn't radical enough. It was out at the same time as the F430, which was essentially a street-legal race car, which is more or less what Ferraris have always been. Enzo, the last car he had anything to do with was the stunning F40, another car of my youth. And I also remember the 288 GTO from around the same time period. But even after Enzo went, you know, they did soften up. They did try to become more mainstream with some of the cars, with better air conditioning, with better seats, with better driving. But, you know, they still have the soul of insanity. You get even in a 355 Spyder, you're going to feel every pebble on the road, and it's going to be more like a race car to your average guy driving around than anything else. This car was made for a guy who had lots of money, or a gal, as Ferrari liked to point out. There's trouble, but had lots of money, lots of taste, wanted the panache of the Ferrari, but did not necessarily want a street legal race car. They wanted something comfortable that they could even daily drive. And truly, this may be the first Ferrari that was designed to daily drive. It is just that comfortable and that civilized, and that's where the question came in: does it really have the heart of a Ferrari if it's made to daily drive as a grand touring car instead of a supercar or a hypercar? The answer to that is yes, by the way. It absolutely does have the soul of a Ferrari, but we'll get into that as we go. So anyway, I'm going to pause for a minute, and then we will dive right into this car. All right, I've pulled it back here. It's not the best area with the garbage and the recycling cans, but at least it's out of the sun, which makes the camera freak out and take some of the joy out of it. But anyway, when I picked this car up this morning, I noticed that it was filthy. It's the first thing I noticed. I said, you've got to be shitting me. I mean, who drives a filthy Ferrari? And my friend, and I almost said his name, which would be bad for a variety of political reasons, pointed out to me that this thing is meant to be driven as a daily driver. So yeah, of course he takes it home in the rain. Of course he drives it around the way he would his Dodge minivan. I mean, it's kind of interesting. And frankly, it is what Ferrari intended and how these cars are being used. On the used market, generally speaking, any Ferrari with 20,000 miles is considered to be pretty high. These things, not so much. On a California, 20,000 miles is, you could almost call it low. There's cars out there with 60, 70, 80,000 miles because the guys drive them. And I think that's also why they regained value and popularity, is even your Ferrari purist types figured out that, hey, you know, I can keep my 599 or Scaglietta or whatever the hell it is in a garage somewhere and drive the shit out of my California and have a lot of fun with it. So that is part of it. But as I get around this car, you're going to see, man, did he he does not keep it like a showpiece. Gone are the little mustachioed guys with brass hammers and, you know, yelling at each other on a cobblestone factory somewhere while seamstresses with big moles on their face laugh and giggle as they stitch leather together. That's over. This car is actually assembled on a very high-tech, very automated assembly line that was, it wasn't quite a new thing for Ferrari when it came out, but it is more advanced than previous assembly lines that that Ferrari had. And that is part, it's a double-edged sword. Look, I'm one of these guys that, give me a early 70s Daytona with really finicky carburetors that you have to hire some guy named Alfredo to come and tune for you. To me, that's awesome. It's pure. It's incredible. And obviously, late model cars like this one, late production Ferraris, and particularly the California with its new direction, have given that up. I mean, they've... it's not quite as egregious as what Mercedes did, going from the 126s and the 124s into cars that are much more mass-produced and much more Volkswagen-y. But it is a cousin to that, and I suppose it's inevitable for every car company. But you do yearn for the early versions of these things. Maserati is one of the greatest evil examples of that. I mean, you take an original birdcage, which is one of the most amazing machines ever constructed, and compare it to a modern Ghibli, which is a rebadged 300, and I'd frankly rather have the 300. So, it's just the way the world has moved on, and to some extent I blame snowflakes like my nephew. Actually, a quick diversion while I'm here, I just noticed Peter's insane motorcycle. Absolutely ridiculous. It's one of these Boss Haas things. This is his middle one. This only has the small block Chevy. He's got one somewhere with a big block. And frankly, it takes a special kind of nutcase to have one. I mean, a complete friggin' lunatic to decide they're going to be an organ donor in such a flamboyant way. I have an idea. Let's have a high torque American V8, and we'll put it on a motorcycle frame that doesn't weigh anything and go drive it around. And that's what some of these nutcases do. And here's one of them. So anyway, we'll get into that later. Don't look for a review on one of those. One of the biggest complaints with the California is this fat ass that it has. Now the front end, and we'll go look over here. God, I have to try to make these videos shorter. Or maybe I should talk faster. This does hearken to the first two Californias, no doubt about it. The scoop in the hood, the grill, definitely has an early California look that they paid homage to. That disappears by the time you get to the end of the doors and goes into what is the biggest styling complaint that people had about these cars when they came out, and that is that it has a fat ass, and it's not particularly wide, it's more tall. But you have to figure a couple of things here. Number one, this was the first folding hardtop convertible from Ferrari. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is up to you. But either way, they had to fit all of those folding panels into the trunk area while still leaving room for luggage, which, by the way, with the top down, it actually has more luggage capacity than an Infiniti G37. So they did manage to do that. It also has a pass-through into the rear seats, which are... The rear seats are ridiculous. You could get either them or a package shelf. I would have opted for the package shelf. Ferrari calls this car a 2+. They won't say 2+2 because your Canadians in the back, frankly, are not going to... Well, unless they don't have legs, they're not going to be very happy back there. So I don't know who you stuff back there, but they are going to friggin' hate you. Even children are going to hate you. Unless they're just happy to be in a Ferrari. But anyway, so you had to stuff the top back in there. You had to stuff the, you see it as stacked exhaust pipes. Ferrari claims that's functional based on some sort of pressure releasing from the rear wheel wells. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I don't know. Whatever, it's stacked. They put a diffuser down there, so they got that in there too. It also has pop-up safety for the rollover protection, which, the earlier Californias certainly didn't have to worry about. These two little compartments here will pop up and roll bars will come out in the event of calamity. And there's a 7-speed transaxle in there. So that's a lot of shit to go in the back end of a car. Thus, it's arguably inelegant rear end. So, is that function over form? Yeah, probably. They probably did what they had to do to fit it. But like it or not, that was one of the complaints. The good news is, and from everything that I can tell you based on my early morning experience and what I read about it, the minute you drive it, you forget all about that ass end. It just doesn't bother you at all. And again, it's designed to attract a different kind of buyer than Ferrari ever tried to attract before. You know, Enzo would be turning over in his grave if he knew his company was trying to attract the kind of buyer that this is. But I think he wouldn't be too troubled that it does have the soul of a Ferrari, which when we drive it, we'll get into. It also has a deck lid spoiler up there built. It has the famous Ferrari script on top, which is quite nice. It's not light, this car. It's 400 pounds more than the F430. With options, you're getting close to 2 tons on this thing. And with, you know, 453 horsepower, essentially what the what that Raptor we drove the other day is. You'd think, yeah, maybe it's not enough to haul it down the road. But because this... God, that pissed off bird has just distracted me. Because it has this terrific double clutch transmission, which doesn't have near the violence of the original F1, this is, you know, real Ferrari F1 technology. It makes every bit of use out of those 450 horsepower from this new V8. Will turn 0 to 60 times. Ferrari claimed 4. People testing the magazines are getting well into the 3s, 3.5, much faster than advertised. Quarter mile times in the 11s. The car is essentially fast as shit, and you know, I don't entirely understand it, because I don't think that many other companies could build a car with this weight, this horsepower, and these statistics and have it get sub 4, 0 to 60 times. I don't think even Porsche could do that. Their cars are significantly lighter, but anyway, let's get into the engine. I haven't popped that yet, so let's see how that goes. I don't even know where you find it. Definitely under here somewhere. There we go. Even those little badges on the fenders, by the way, are options, and very expensive ones at that. You know what? I'm going to tell you, that is the most friendly hood release I've done in a while. It just wasn't that hard. So anyway, here we have a... Now, if I read this right, it's supposed to be a 180-degree, like almost a flat-engine V8. And again, I'm no Ferrari expert, so don't argue with me, because frankly, you're going to be right if you know more than I do based on anything. But anyway, it doesn't matter. 4.3 liters, 450-ish horsepower, 32 valves, 8,000 RPM redline. It's a derivative of the F430 engine, and it's mated to that the Gaytrag tranny, the Getrag transmission, 7-speed dual clutch with incredibly fast shifting, which does, again, make this car make it pretty quick, and at the same time it makes it very, very civilized, because when you drove the old F1 cars, if you weren't shifting them manually, or if you were, it was almost like getting a sledgehammer at the back of the head if you were shifting at speed. With this thing, it's much more refined and doesn't feel at all as violent as the prior cars. And again, that's part of what the purists didn't like. They like the sledgehammer to the head. They don't want this thing to be smooth and peaceful, but yeah, there it is. There you see the chassis number. That's a neat thing. Like the way the battery is there. You can see that the engine is in the rear of the axles. Everything is fit between the axles, so it has near perfect 50-50 weight distribution. Engine way back, front axis forward, transaxle in the back with the tranny before the rear wheels. So with the driver in there, the car is incredibly balanced, which gives you terrific road handling, even if it's not as stiff as some of the sportier Ferraris. It still handles just like any Ferrari and will make you freak out when you drive it, and that's, you know, that's enough for any Ferrari. It doesn't matter if it's softer than most of them. It's still a Ferrari. Well, I'll stop crying about that. But anyway, there it is under the hood. Lovely, nice big red intake plenum, red, you know, valve covers. You could almost call it a redhead, which is what Testarossa means, by the way. Everything sounds better in Italian. I was going to say, I like the way the battery, by the way, is set there in the middle for weight. But yeah, you could say camel shit in Italian, and I'm sure it's a very, very very pretty name, and you might try to name something that without realizing what it meant. Also, it does appear that that hood scoop is functional, given the sound deadening. I believe also, by the way, this was the first direct injected Ferrari when it came out, which, you know, has that horrible ticking sound on a lot of cars. Porsche fixes that with another set of injectors. Mercedes doesn't bother to fix it at all. Their early cars just ticked. And Ferrari tried to fix it with a lot of insulation. And I guess from what I can tell, they did a pretty good job, because you just don't hear much ticking from under the, from behind the wheel. Alright, so I went on for like 5 minutes there, not realizing I'd hit the damn button on the camera, so I recorded nothing. So if I duplicate myself, forgive me. I know I talked for a minute about the headlights, which, you know, they're pretty, they're slanted, they've got all that little LED crap that modern headlights have, the high beam intensity looking stuff in the front, and yeah, you know, they're fine. I'd probably like a couple of sealed beams better from the 70s. These do have carbon ceramic brakes, which Ferrari actually managed. You know, one of the things with carbon brakes is, oh my god, carbon brakes are fantastic. Yeah, but for daily driving, they kind of suck, because the initial tip-in of them, when you hit the pedal, sometimes they grip way too hard and fling you forward. They're just that grippy. Ferrari kind of tuned these for a more civilized daily driving, and that system does work pretty good. Let's have a look inside that. I'm going to put the top up here in a minute. Let's open it up and see what our space is like without it. God, this car is filthy. What the hell? Cars just don't like me. No idea why. What I ever did to offend them. Alright, well, actually, I did a lot. Okay, so here it is. That's actually kind of a shitload of luggage room this thing has. Again, more than a G37 with a pass-through. Pretty nice. You see a set of books there. He's got some little bag with the Ferrari logo. This is his first Ferrari, and I just know it's only a matter of time before he has the watch, the socks, the shirt with Ferrari on it, the hat. You know, showing up everywhere with that thing, putting his keys extravagantly on the table, and, you know, it just becomes a matter of time with these guys. You can get just about anything now with the Ferrari logo on it. A lot of people who don't have them do. But anyway, let's get the top up and see how it looks with that. So let's see if I can manage that without looking ridiculous. Alright, so I presume we get our ignition on, which is done in the standard way. And this looks a lot like it. Look at this weird sex toy looking center console. I mean, that is lewd. Absolutely lewd. I don't know who designed that, but that is taking the Italian thing a little bit too far. That doesn't do shit. Alright, so there's ignition. Try it now. Alright, we got something happening. Man, look at that back. It goes like a foot back, so there's all kinds of sensors that, you know, the car has to decide it's okay to put the top up based on its, you know, radar-y. Man, that happens fast and it happens scary. If I weren't alone, it would be nice to see that from outside, but anyway, let's see how it looks. Yeah, so there it is with the top up. I think it does actually gain a certain amount of elegance that way. A very nice rakish swept back roofline. You know, obviously it's a convertible, so there's no window frames, which is nice. And yeah, you know, it's kind of have your cake and eat it too that you get with the hardtop convertibles. You know, when the top's down, you're in a real convertible. When the top's up, you're in a real coupe, or coupe, as they would say across the Atlantic. So, you know, I guess it was inevitable that Ferrari would make one, but yeah, still, I probably prefer the old insubstantial cloth crap on the first Californias. Anyway, there it is with the top up and everything looking good. So I tell you what, I'm going to get the top back down. Let's do that first. We'll see how that works. The hell with it. You already said it. Look, I'm going to get the top down. I'm going to get my shit inside the car and the plate on. And then we'll look at the inside and go for a spin. Alright, so before we get going, one of the things the owner pointed out that I should show was the gas cap. He said it's a work of art. It should be hanging on the wall. Yeah, you know, it's kind of pretty. But I guess when you're all in a lusty love affair with the prancing horse, you could put that logo on a, you know, bidet and you'd probably find it sexy. But anyway, let's get in. He also sent me this, which was sort of an impromptu window sticker for this car. I don't think it's the actual real window sticker, but he did pick some of the options there. It is a Rosso Scuderia paint. I presume that's red, which I think like 85% of Ferraris are. It does have Daytona seats. I know that's a nice option. That's these guys here, and I think they are not cheap. I would suspect that is a, I don't know if it's on here or not. If he added it. He did not, but I'm going to say that is a huge option in this car. Very, very expensive to put in. Hilariously, the wheels were $4,400. Oh yeah, the seats were $5,000. These power seats. The steering wheel was $4,000 with this little Manatino thing. That's famously what it's called, Formula One type style, and way to adjust the car's settings with a little switch here. Your engine start, carbon fiber, and then an LED shift light here at the top of the steering wheel buried into the carbon fiber. So that's what a you know, more than $5,000 steering wheel looks like. And you know, I've had cars that I've paid far less for. The yellow tachometer is an option. That wasn't cheap. That was almost $1,000. Cruise control was $1,000. Parking sensors, they were expensive. And even the shields on the side of the fenders that we looked at earlier, those things were $1,500. So yeah, there you go. Nothing about this car is going to be cheap. Let's see what we got when we fire it up. So key in, ignition, engine start, and you know what? It does sound pretty nice with the exception of that beeping, which I hate. It would be nice if they could do. I tell you what, let me get my, we're going to do that again. The beeping just ruined that for me. Alright, off. Got a Ferrari California logo there on the LCD screen, but let's get that back on. Door closed. Ignition on. If this thing beeps at me, I'm going to be pissed because there's no reason for it. And it didn't. Alright, well thank you for that, Ferrari. I appreciate that. Oh. You know, and that's where, again, the guys who say it's not really a Ferrari, you sit in it and you start making that needle move, and it does have a very big tack needle in yellow directly in front of your face. Screams Ferrari to me. Anyway, on this little thing over here, you've got a driver information center, which I see we've got glare, so let me try and get the camera to somewhere where we don't, because this was interesting. If I go through, it's dimming. I don't need dimming. Display. No, you see, I've already screwed all this up. I'm making a balls of it. And the sun's in the way, but let's see. Okay, we've got mode. No, that's down there. Display. Okay, here we go. This is getting us somewhere. There we've got tire pressure sensors. This is a shame you can't see it. This was interesting. This is his report from the trip odometer, and he was very proud of his high score on this of 146 miles an hour. He said when he bought the car, the high score was previously 95, and somewhere on a public road he did manage to get it to there. I have got to be honest with you, nothing in the world would make me happier than finding a way to beat his high score and delivering this car back to him with a higher number on maximum speed. But you know, the cops slowed me down at one stage, and it's just something that I'm not going to do anymore, and it's a shame. It's a shame to be old and scared of the police, but I admit it, I am. I don't want to go to jail this morning. So we get back to our gauges. That gives us, looks like oil temp and water temp, which is fine with me. We also have some fuel in there. You've got automatic light switch, which looks suspiciously like it's out of a more production car. Down low, you've got your electric parking brake, you know, this nice red stitching and all the lovely leather materials everywhere. Ferrari's always been nice with their materials, and in the modern Ferraris before this one, before this daily driver Ferrari, they kind of lured you in with all these lovely stitched leather things that made it look like a Bentley, and then, you know, the guy who was driving would scare the bejesus out of you, and of course that's part of what made a Ferrari cool. Big vents coming out made of carbon fiber. You know, I got $230,000 car, so you're going to get all of that stuff. You've got the infotainment system directly out of a 2007 Town and Country minivan. I mean, exactly. Looks like we've got Tush playing. Love it. Yeah, that's the favorite song in the last year that I've turned the radio on and found. Here you have California script above the glove box. You've got a little Ferrari Formula One Constructor World Champion, what is that, 08 badge, all very nice. You got a bunch of, almost saying names, got a bunch of his crap inside there. Again, the stitch work is just stunning. It's no longer those, little moly women who, do it in a cobblestone factory, but however it's getting done nice. You have a self-dimming mirror right out of a Lexus. I don't see HomeLink garage door, so I can't give him shit then for having his garage door opener there. Yeah, of course, more knobs and switches and that sort of. There's absolutely no reason to get into this at all. I do know it has factory navigation, and who cares? It's got the world's most complex climate control system that I've ever seen. I mean, I don't know if I could figure this thing out. I'd like to have it on, actually. Oh my God, that's already too strong. Get some air going, and you bump the item up. Down here you've got, reverse, automatic. I know it's not power steering. I'm very impatient. Let's press it and see what happens. Yes. Nothing's happening here at all when I press that. I know your traction control and your sport modes and stuff are here, so I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't look up and figure out what the hell PS was. But anyway, you've got your top control here, you've got your window switches, you've got a hilarious little ashtray there. You better smoke those little Capri cigarettes. In here you've got a pink mask, a reminder of shitty days that we've just gotten past, and frankly a very nice space to store a small frame Beretta of some kind, so all very lovely. In the middle of the yellow tack you've got your gear indicator. You can see right now we're in park. I can pull one of these carbon fiber paddle shifters and that'll get us into one. If I press auto, it'll leave it in one, so now we're manually shifting, and away we go. The steering is very, very gentle, and I don't know if that again is part of making this thing a daily driver, but it's surprisingly low effort in a park. I mean, my grandmother could drive this thing around a parking lot. There's just nothing to it. I mean, it in fact starts and moves just like any modern car would, so hopefully that stiffens up a little bit as we go faster. Wait for the gates. I tell you what, I'm just going to put it back in auto. I'm going to leave the AC on because it's very nice, actually. This car is very cold air conditioning. I bet that's a departure for Ferrari. I'll just turn the corner here. Oh man, is that, and you see, that's kind of what I like about this thing. I mean, as mild as you feel like it might be, it isn't. I think we can turn off all the traction control. There is a launch control in this car, but you need a lot of different parameters for that. Okay, so now traction control is off. That means we can really kick the tail out if we wanted to. Go around corners. With the neutral handling it has, you should be able to really just have a lot of fun making it tail happy. I mean, I'm going to try not to kill this squirrel. There's one who suicided earlier. You see another one up there. There are also deers at the road. I tell you what, I'm going to pause it till we get to the end of the road. Nice. So I put it back in sport mode, so we got that going for us. Singularly the most indecipherable speedometer I've ever seen in a motor vehicle, and that includes that 65 Buick Riviera with the dial. Probably should have left the top up, it's so noisy. People do look at this thing. this car, I would honestly be in prison in no time. I'm starting to completely understand where that 146 mile an hour top score came from. It just begs you to put the throttle down and start beating the shit out of it. Oh my God, this is a dangerous ride into work for me. This really, I just got a speeding ticket in Georgia. Yeah, I got to be very careful. But anyway, you know, what a nice driver. And again, that is the point of this car, is to be a daily driver. But right under the surface is everything that you expect to have in a Ferrari. And even if it doesn't have that incredible guttural torque of a, you know, like a big V8 in a Corvette, it's making full use of whatever the hell it does have. That was almost mild. I should really be manually shifting it to get in a lower gear. It's almost like Ferrari is defaulting a little bit to make it less radical in this car. Anyway, I know I've rambled on and on and on, so I'm not going to keep going. I'm going to pause it again and just take it up for one more quick shot when we turn the corner up there. You know, you get these instantaneous shifts. Definitely F1 technology. No head bobbing at all. They really did an amazing job of making it smooth, again, if that's what you're aiming for. You know, honestly, with the top down and even with the camera exposed, I feel a little bit ridiculous. I'm not a guy who likes attention, and this car is screaming for people to look at me, which is not at all. I mean, I'm the guy who's going to be in a trench coat with glasses on. It's more my style. If I wasn't holding the camera, I could be manually shifting and getting much deeper into the revs. But anyway, you get the point. The car is a lot of fun to drive. It's very, very balanced. It's very drivable. Again, you know, I think my girlfriend could drive this thing without thinking too much of it. And that was what Ferrari was shooting for. But at the same time, something evil lurks within, and you just get the feeling you could put it in tractionless mode, get out on a racetrack and have a shitload of fun. And that's enough to make it a real Ferrari, never mind the paint and the horses on the fenders. So this one, again, borrowed from a friend, not for sale, just having fun with the review. Thank you very much for having a look. Appreciate it, and we will see you with something else pretty soon. Try to get something for tomorrow, but who knows. Take care, and we'll see you with the next one.